Well, good afternoon, members, officers, and those members of the public who are tuned in. Just a few notes, as always. This planning committee meeting on the 5th of August. I would like to go through names, as always, to see who's with us. I am aware there are some substitutes because of people not attending this afternoon. If I don't call your name out, don't worry, I will come to that in a moment. So, as usual, going through the names, Councillor Orban, can you just say you're here? If I don't hear from you, obviously I know you're not. Councillor Orban.
Here.
Councillor Curry.
Here, Chair.
I know Councillor Duckworth isn't with us. Apologies. Councillor Taylor isn't with us, and Councillor Dennis isn't with us. I'll come to that in a moment. Councillor Bayford.
Here, Chair.
Councillor Coleman Cook.
Here, Chair.
Councillor Hart.
Here, Chair.
Councillor Wright. Councillor
Here,
Wright.
Here, Chair.
Councillor Garner.
I'm here.
Thank you. Councillor Scott.
Here, Chair.
Councillor Keane, I believe, has given apologies. Councillor Patmore.
She sent her apologies.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you for that. Okay. And obviously, I'm here, so you'll be pleased to know. Okay, just a few notes just to keep everybody, those who haven't been with us, which I'll come to in a few minutes' time. If you have any technical difficulties this afternoon at the meeting, please get in touch with the Democratic Service Officer, who is Charles, this afternoon, and his telephone number is 577186. His number will be included at the top of the chat stream for your convenience. I would ask all participants, when you are not speaking, please mute your microphone. This stops a lot of background noise, and so we don't pick up unusual noises and so on. And that's throughout the proceedings. Microphones must only be used when the participant has been granted permission to speak. To gain permission to speak, please very briefly indicate in the chat box that you wish to speak. And I will come to you as soon as that person's finished. Would everyone present please ensure the mobile phones are turned to silent, and they must not be used to make or receive calls whilst the meeting is in progress. Please also refrain from checking emails or conducting any other business, and ensure that you are in a quiet room free from distractions for the duration of the meeting. Please note that this meeting is being live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel, so obviously the members of the public can tune in if they wish. Members requesting to speak under Council Procedure Rule 20.1. The following members have requested to speak: Councillor Banbridge and Braidwood on agenda item 4C. Councillors Raskin and Rogers on item 4A, and Councillor Farrance on item 5. If there's any other members apart from the committee wish to speak, could they please state now? Okay, thank you. The following applications have been reserved for public speaking. Would members please note the following items on their agenda? Agenda item 4A, agenda item 4C. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence. We have apologies been received from Councillor Dennis, Duckworth, Keane and Taylor. Also Councillor Moore, I believe that was just now. In their place, we welcome Councillor Whitehead as a substitute for the Labour group. Also Councillor Rzeski. Do we have any other apologies or any substitutes? No. Okay, thank you. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Any members have any declarations? Please say it now. Thank you, Helen. Councillor Whitehead, I beg your pardon. I just see your note on here. I'm aware you are obviously a substitute approved. And also I'd like to welcome Nick Hughes, Committee Services Manager. Thank you for that, Nick. Agenda item 3A, minutes of the Planning Committee on the 1st of July 2020. Do members agree that the minutes of the planning meeting held on the 1st of July 2020 be approved and signed by myself, which I hope you read? Could I have a proposer, please?
Proposed.
Seconded.
Right. Would you like to give your names? I believe Charlotte
David
is.
Hart. David Hart.
David
Proposed.
Hart, thank you. And seconded by?
George Rashesky.
Thank you, George. Do you all agree?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. Agenda item 3B, minutes of the Planning Committee on the 15th of July 2020. Do members agree that the minutes of the Planning Committee held on the 15th of July be approved and signed by the chairman? Once again, a proposal, please.
David Hart.
Thank you, David. Seconder?
Yeah, George.
No arguing, please. George, Councillor Rosesky, yes? Yeah. Do you all agree?
Agreed.
Thank you. Agenda item 4, the schedule of planning applications and public speaking. Once again, members, I'm sure you're aware of this, the way things are. Any site visits cannot take place at present because of the situation we're finding it's in. So we will have to sort that out if there is an agreement about a site visit. Very difficult, as I'm sure you understand. Agenda item 4A, which is the planning application for approval, land north of Cottington Road and east of Lavender Lane, Ramsgate. On this occasion, I would ask Nick if he could read out the printed statement he has received, please. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Chairman. Would you like me to do the... Sorry, Chairman, is it the person that's...
Right, I believe you have two.
Yeah, I do. What would you like me to do first?
Mrs. Kisby.
Mrs. Kisby, yeah, that's no problem.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Thank you.
That's all right. Right. Can everybody hear me?
Yes. Yep. I can. Yep.
Good. So this is the planning statement by Mrs. Kisby. So, as a team, we have worked closely with Emma Fibbins of Thanet District Council and Kent County Council over the recent months to produce a scheme of high-quality, energy-efficient homes using vernacular styles and materials set against the open landscape of the fields beyond. The scheme works towards a positive aesthetic impact on its surroundings, promoting through strong articulation of details via the use of porches, bay windows, overhanging eaves and changes in materials to create a pleasant streetscape and give the development a strong sense of place while complementing the surrounding area. Further interest is achieved through the use of a varied roofscape of gables and hips and dwellings which are designed to turn the corner, maximising street frontages and providing natural surveillance. The scheme has been laid out to avoid interlocking between dwellings and to neighbouring sites by providing all new dwellings with generous gardens. Rear gardens do not back onto public spaces and side gardens have been avoided. The dwellings have been set back from the road edge and off-street parking has been incorporated for all dwellings adhering to Kent County Council Highways recommendations. Given the previous agricultural nature of the site, landscaping and ecology are at the forefront of our approach to the site layout despite it being species poor at present. Breaking up from the built form with native planting and spaces between the homes allows us to avoid an urban environment with the overall aim of enhancing the local area and built environment. We have also provided areas of open space to the centre and north of the site and created planting buffers between the development and Cottington Road. Boundaries have been reinforced with native tree and hedge planting to provide both screening to the site and the neighbouring properties, helping to create wildlife corridors. The provision of bird and bat boxes, log piles and holes in fences for hedgehogs have been provided across the site to the approval of the Kent County Council Ecology team. To close, with the Planning Officer recommendation of approval, we hope that you will support our application to provide much needed high quality housing in Thanet, with the construction works to be undertaken by local contractor WW Martin Limited. End.
Thank you, Nick. Again, I'm going to ask Nick to read a statement out raising points of concern from a Mr. Willoughby Brown. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Chairman. Statement of Mr. Willoughby Brown. I, along with many others, vigorously object to the proposals being put forward by Orbit Homes for social or any other form of housing. Cliffs End is an area where most people are homeowners who purchase their homes to live in a semi-rural location, a village. They purchased an environment, not just a house, not an urban sprawl. Cliffs End is an already overcrowded village. There is no infrastructure in place to accommodate any more houses. Many families have more than one vehicle. The traffic and parking in the village is already under stress and is becoming increasingly worse. The bus service has stopped, and if it did resume, it would impact the problems with the country lanes. An extra 60 plus houses, total Orbit development, could increase the traffic in the village by at least 70 to 80 vehicles, if not more. Cottington Road and Fodes Lane are narrow country lanes with no pavements, no yellow lines or parking restrictions, and are not suitable for existing through traffic. Additional traffic will make the area even more dangerous. There is one play area and one village hall. Residents, including children and the elderly, need to cross Fodes Lane or walk on unpaved roads to access these. Many outside visitors to the play area park their cars on Fodes Lane, resulting in single lane traffic, obstructing the view of the road and therefore making crossing the road treacherous, an accident waiting to happen. In recent communications, the government recognises that pubs, libraries, village shops, etc. are essential to communities and form part of the fabric of areas. There are no such provisions for the community in these proposals. In fact, the poorly researched application or sales pitch says that the village has various amenities, such as a pub that currently lies empty with the owners wanting to turn it into more unwanted housing, people and cars, and of course more money for the developers, and a village shop which is closed. Has the effect of increasing population been thought of? We already have overstretched schools, hospitals and doctor surgeries. More houses will only exacerbate the increasing antisocial behaviour, traffic congestion and noise, and decrease the quality of life for existing residents and future ones. There is also a religious and historical connection to the proposed site. It is the place where St. Augustine introduced Christianity to the country. Therefore, this site should be protected and treasured. It is not where 100% social housing development should be built, completely out of character with the environment. Government reformation of the planning system proposes to reduce pressure to build on greenfield sites and deliver more homes that fit the character of the local area, delivering more high-quality, well-designed homes and beautiful and greener communities for people to live in. This application hasn't really been thought through. Planning is there to create a better environment for people, not to assist developers with their bank balance or transient politicians with their egos. The tragedy is that the mistakes created whilst in office last a lifetime. As we are no longer a member of the EU, we actually need our farmland more, and we need more than just houses, a view shared by our local MP, Sir Roger Gale. I have so far opposed every planning application for the building of houses in Cottington Road, Cliffs End. It seems that every time that I or anybody else objects to an application, the developers and their lawyers amend the application, making it necessary to go through the planning process all over again. Maybe a deliberate attempt to thwart the many reasonable and intelligent objections to their unwanted proposals, raising justified concern about the planning and objection process. End.
Thank you very much, Nick. Speaking as ward councillor, Councillor Rattigan, please. You have 3 minutes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yep, thank you.
I'm speaking on behalf of 2 residents in the ward. The main concern is the outline planning was based on 30% social housing. The residents were told this wasn't going to be rented, but where people can buy and share, the cost of the scheme. This has now increased to 70% of the development as share ownership and 30% as rental properties. So a lot of residents feel that the original allotment of 30% affordable housing should be maintained, because that was the basis of the original planning permission. It's a major development for the village, where there's going to be a huge increase in families by the increased housing. Like the last gentleman who Nick's read out, there is no amenities there. There's no shops. There's no pub, and they closed many years prior to the application being made. Also, residents are having to pay for their own screening, because the site does, and I've been down and visited this site down there. The site really overlooks the properties behind there, and one resident has had to spend just over £2,000 putting high fencing just so he can regain his privacy. So our sort of aim is really that the outline planning was given on 30% social housing, so that should be stuck to.
Thank you, Councillor Rattican. Also speaking is Ward Councillor, which I understand you have a couple of comments from residents. Councillor Rogers. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members. Besides voicing the views of the residents, I've been asked to speak on behalf of Mrs Helen Knowles and Mr Peter Parsons. At this point, I'm voicing the objections of Mrs Helen Knowles, a Cliffsend resident. She's noted that further revised plans have been submitted on the 23rd and 27th of July. She wasn't notified and was unable to object to them. She notes that 2 streetlights are to be placed directly behind 11 Oakland Court. She strongly objects to these, as she has a sensitivity to light while sleeping. There were no streetlights visible from the main bedroom of her house when she bought it 17 years ago, and these lights are positioned almost opposite each other. She suggests that only one light is necessary. Her objection, as previously stated in her email of 20th of February, is that the house to be built directly behind 11 Oakland Court, which is now plot 22, previously plot 21, appears to have windows overlooking her kitchen, conservatory and garden. She would like to remind you that one of the planning committee members present on the original application agreed with her that this was unsatisfactory and stated that a single-storey dwelling should be built behind 11 Oakland Court. As this has not been taken into account, she respectfully suggests that plot 22 be turned round so the side of the house that does not have windows is overlooking 11 Oakland Court. I'm now speaking for Mr and Mrs Parsons of Beech Grove. They state that the original outline planning agreement of 30% affordable housing should be upheld and not changed to 100% to ensure that the site is fully in keeping with the surrounding properties. The upper windows and back gardens of the new development would impact hugely on the residents of Beech Grove, resulting in loss of privacy and overlooking. He also asked that the plans for mitigating the impact on Beech Grove, Oakland Court and Lavender Lane should be strengthened and not simply be reliant on limited fencing, trees and shrubbery within the ownership of existing residents. The current fence was evolved as a perimeter to an agricultural field, not for secure buffering between back-to-back houses. Going on to my views, the developer's planning statement states that Cliffsend has a preschool, closed 2018, post office and shop, that closed in 2016, public house, that closed in 2017, and a bus service that ceased a while ago. So it seems that the homework wasn't done on this. Perhaps Orbit would like to fund these facilities, as they say the site is well located to benefit from the use of these local services and facilities. The change from 30% to 100% affordable housing on both sides of Cottington Road is a significant increase and dramatically changes the dynamics of the development and village. This application now consists of a higher density of terraced, multi-occupancy and semi-detached houses. The new layout is unacceptable to the residents of Cliffsend, and I would ask you that you refuse this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rogers. Just to mention, which I forgot to mention to members, officers with us this afternoon, the Planning Applications Manager, Mr Ian Livingston, Planning Officer Emma Fibbins, and our committee clerk, which is Charlotte Crowley. So can I move on? I believe it is Emma. I'll be corrected. For your report, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'm just sharing my screen. Okay, so the proposal is within the area outlined in red on this plan. Cotterton Road, you can see in this location here. To the left is Lavender Lane, and to the right is Beech Grove. So the property's back onto that site here. The area in blue is not part of this application, but is part of another application that members will see on another agenda. So this is an aerial view of the site. So the site is located here. And then a closer view of that. So in this area here, so the rear boundary of the site runs along this area in line with the rear of the properties to fronting Lavender Lane. And then these are just some 3D Google views towards the neighbour property. So this is Lavender Lane running on the western boundary of the site, and you can see the location of the existing properties. So they're quite a distance from the western boundary. And you can see this property on the right-hand side here, the fact that there's limited tree screening along here, but there's quite a lot of tree screening to the left along this area here. And then this is looking now towards the properties that front onto Beech Grove. So this is the eastern boundary of the site. So again, you can see an existing tree screen that exists along part of that boundary. This is now a photo looking into the application site. So this is it as it currently stands. So this is looking towards the northern boundary of the site. Again, looking towards the northern boundary of the site, and now seeing part of the eastern boundary and the properties in Beech Grove. And then coming along again, the properties in Beech Grove. Now this is again the eastern boundary of the site. And now you can see it again in relation to the road. So this is the reserve matters application. The outline application has already approved the principal development and the access, including some off-site highway works. So those works included some footpath provision along the side of the road here. And now this is looking to the western boundary. So this is Lavender Lane, and you can see here, and the existing properties behind. And again, you can see the tree screen. On the left-hand side here, you can see the grade 2 listed St Augustine's Cross. This is now taken in front of the site with the application site on the left. So you can see this is Cottington Road running through the middle. And then this is looking again along Cottington Lane towards Lavender Lane. And again, you can see the monument in the distance. And this is now taken from outside the monument. The monument is off to the right-hand side here. The cross. And this is looking towards the application site. So these are the properties fronting Lavender Lane with the application site behind these properties. So as I said, this is a reserved matters application so the matters that members need to consider are the layout of the development, the appearance, scale of the development, and the landscaping. So the proposal was 41 units. This is the number that was approved through the outline. So the principle of this number on the site has been agreed. This includes the impact on any highway movements resulting from this development. So the proposal is for a mix of detached, semi-detached and terraced units. There's also 2 flats within the site as well. You can see that there's a mix between the detached at the entrance of the site. There's a few terraced towards the centre. In terms of looking at the pattern of surrounding development, the majority of surrounding properties are semi-detached or detached, but there are some examples of terraces within the village. Within the application site, the terrace properties are only in groups of 3, so they're not significantly large terrace blocks. There is a group of 4 on the western side, but again, these are all quite centrally located within the site. So the majority of units you would see would be the larger, spacious units from the entrance. You can see as you come into the site from the central access point, there's an area of open space towards the centre, which would be a communal informal open space area. And again, there's an open space area towards the north of the site, adjacent to the northern boundary. In terms of landscaping, the proposal is for the road to be in tarmac, but you can see the pink areas are all the paving areas to be provided. So all carport areas would be paved, and there's new tree planting proposed within the open space towards the centre here, and also adjacent to the southern boundary. So through the outline consent, consideration was given on the impact on the setting of the Grade 2 listed St Augustine's Cross. As you saw, there's quite a distance from the application site to the cross, so it's not considered that there will be any significant impact, but it was suggested that there should be some landscaping buffer provided towards the entrance to the site in order to reduce any impact. So this, you can see to the front of the site here, a minimum 5 metre landscaping buffer, which would reduce the impact on the listed cross. So just moving on to show you some of the designs. These are some of the examples of the designs of the properties within the site. So the traditional design properties, they're all with pitched roofs, red brick, some weatherboarding and render is proposed. Windows would be set within a reveal, and the roof would be clay tiles. So this again, different examples of those building types. There's at least 5 different building types within the site, and within each of those different building types, there's again variations where there's a mixture of materials used. You can just see different varieties. Like this one's showing the cladding. So originally it was proposed for there to be white cladding, but this has now been changed to black because it's been considered that's more in keeping with the village location. And again, there's some bay windows and features that are characteristic of the surrounding area. So this is a street elevation showing you within the site itself. So this section is section 0. So if you look on the left-hand side of the layout plan, this is the stretch of buildings running along the western side of the site. So you can see there's a mix with some gable features. There's some bay windows within the development. They're all 2-storey buildings, so again, in terms of scale, they're in keeping with the general scale of surrounding buildings. And moving on, this is section 1. So this is now looking along the eastern side of the site at this group of buildings here. So again, you can see the mix of materials with some black weatherboarding, render, and the use of the red brick. And then looking at section 2, which is looking towards the open space. The open space is this area in front of the property here. And it's a stretch of buildings running along this row here. So again, you can see there's generous spacings between the buildings, and it is in keeping with the general pattern of surrounding development. And this is now looking at section 3. So this is along the north of the site, looking towards this row of properties here. And again, you can see quite large spacings between the buildings. And you can see the mix in different roof colours, and again, the mix of materials across the site. And this is now looking section 4. So this is looking towards these few houses on the right-hand side of the left access road here. And then this is section 5, looking towards the properties in this area here. And then here are some visual perspectives showing how the proposal could look within the site. So I'll just click through a few of these. So again, you can see the buildings are set back from the road. They've got spacious frontages and space for parking. In terms of parking, there's 2 spaces per property and 1 space for the flats. And then there's an additional 15 visitor parking spaces. Now, in terms of looking at the impact on neighbours, which was one of the main considerations, we've looked at the distances between the rear elevations and the neighbouring properties on both sides. Amended plans have been submitted through the application, which have pushed these properties further from the neighbouring residents. Originally, there was a minimum distance of approximately 21 metres, but we've asked for that to be increased, given the fact that there's currently no overlooking from this site to the neighbours. So we feel that a greater distance is required. So the properties mainly affected would be this property here, number 19 Beach Grove. There's a distance of 25 metres from the corner of this property and the rear elevation of the proposed units, with a distance of approximately 30 metres to the central garden area. And for this property on the that I'm indicating here, there's a distance of 23 metres between the rear elevation of this property and the proposed dwellings. So they do exceed what we would normally consider to be a minimum distance guideline when considering the issue of overlooking. In addition to that, there is the tree screen that runs along the boundary, although it's appreciated that at certain times of the year there would be more overlooking than in others. There's also some boundary treatment along this boundary, and we have recommended a condition that has suggested a 2 metre high fence is erected along this boundary where there are gaps within that boundary treatment. And in terms of the rear elevations, it is accepted that there are bedroom windows within these, but given that distance and the boundary treatment that we're proposing, along with the tree screening, it's considered that on balance, the impact on the neighbouring residents would be acceptable. For the residents along here of Beech Grove, there's a minimum distance of 30 metres. So again, quite a good distance between the properties. And again, all of these are up 2 stories, so there's no rooms within the roof at all. On the left-hand side, the main properties affected would be these ones in the top, or the property in the top corner, which is the closest. All the others are quite a distance away. So the distance here is 32 metres between the rear elevation and the side elevation of this property, and there's a distance of 20 metres from the proposed rear elevation and this the boundary here. So whilst there's a garden area within this space, it's considered that the distance is adequate enough to prevent any significant overlooking. There's also within this area here like a buffer area which has the potential for some tree screening. So there's tree screening along this part of the boundary, and it would seem that there's some space for some landscaping in this area here, which doesn't fall within the application site. So I'll just show you quickly, following on from that, the photo. So just to remind you, this is then on the right-hand side, looking towards the Beech Grove residence. So this, as you can see, during the winter, there is more overlooking because the trees are in leaf. Then just again showing you the properties here with the tree screening during the summer. And then these are the properties that would back onto that one. So you can see this is the rear elevation with the window, central window, and then these are the other properties with the other 2 windows. And then with the Lavender Lane side, again, just to remind you of the photo towards those properties. And then this is the property that I was mentioning with the distance of 32 metres to that elevation and 20 metres to this boundary here, where you can see there's some hedge screening. So that the impact on these properties are considered to be acceptable. And that's just showing the properties that will back onto it and the rear window. So in terms of other issues, I think affordable housing has been raised as one of the biggest issues. The site is being proposed as 100% affordable housing. This plan shows the location of the rented units. So the pink units are the rented units within the site. All of the purple units are shared ownership units. Now, there was a requirement for 30% of the development to be affordable through the outline consent. There's no policy that states that it can't exceed 30%. So we don't have a policy justification to refuse a development just because it's come forward for more affordable housing than what we've originally approved. In addition to that, there is a big need for affordable units within the district. As mentioned within my report, the council has recently had their housing strategy adopted, which is showing at least 309 households in serious need of housing, and there's 2,354 households on the register. So there is a strong need for affordable units within the district, and therefore we would not be discouraging developers from providing affordable housing as long as it doesn't impact on the community mix. Given the size of the site, and it's quite a small size of site, the fact that only a limited number of rented units are proposed. So whilst it's 30% of the site, it's only 5 more rented units than we would have approved through the outline. So it's, with the majority of the site being shared ownership, it's not considered that there would be any real sort of detrimental issues to the community, with the majority being in that use. So given the fact we have no reason to justify refusing a scheme because of the 100% provision, this is not being raised as a concern. So overall is recommended for approval on the basis that the development is considered to be in keeping with the surrounding character and appearance of the area, that there's not considered to be any significant impact on neighbouring amenity. The highway issues have been resolved in terms of parking provision and layout, and highways have no concerns with that, and parking provision is considered to be adequate. And in terms of landscaping, it exceeds the minimum requirement for open space within the site, and the tree screening along the front and boundaries is considered to adequately serve the development. So it's recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emma. I move that the officer's recommendation is adopted. Could I have the Vice Chair second, please?
Sorry. Yes, I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman Cook. Right, members wishing to debate this. I have, first of all, Councillor Orban.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Where to start, really? I think there's the messages coming from some of the residents I found to be a bit snobby, but there you are. That's just my feeling. The site in itself is more than adequate to take this development. The layout and the design of the houses are more than adequate. The 70% of shared ownership is also adequate. There's a few social housing which we should all support, because not everybody can afford to buy a house. The issue of the of St Augustine's Cross, I think as a Christian chairman, I'm sure St Augustine would have been very pleased that a development was taking place that would accommodate people who can't afford to buy their own house, and also would happily support the development of shared ownership, so people can get on that housing ladder. And I think overall, Chairman, the development is very good and is more than welcome, and I'll fully support it, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Orban. I think obviously you're old enough to remember St Augustine. Perhaps you could get in touch for his approval. Councillor Whitehead. Are you there, Helen?
Yes, just sorting my microphone. Thank you,
Okay,
Chair. I don't think it's a particular secret that we are constantly struggling to provide affordable and accessible housing for our residents. And so I find it very encouraging that we have 100% development at this point and that this step has been taken. I think it's significant to look at the percentages involved. We have 22% rented and 78% shared ownership. So I think we have an interesting and useful mix of demographics there. And we also have a wide mix of property types. We're not looking at a development simply of one-bedroom flats. We are looking at family homes. We are looking at 3 beds. We're looking at a development that covers pretty much all of our potential population demographics. In terms of the facilities, I think it's also important to remember that we have strong evidence across the country that the building of housing does promote and does accentuate the building of communities, the availability of shops, the availability of facilities. The fact that certain things don't exist at this point does not mean that they will not exist in the future, and quite often development, specifically infrastructure development, does provide this. I'm aware and appreciative of the efforts that have been made, both in terms of screening and moving the boundaries outwards. I think it's heartening that the highways don't have an issue at this point. And yes, I would like to again make it very clear just how important affordable housing is for all of our residents and for our entire community. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Whitehead. Councillor Jill Bayford.
Thank you, Chair. I think the thing to consider here is that the principle of development has already been agreed. I understand exactly how some of the residents must feel about the change to their environment, but it's going to come anyway. As far as I can see, this development is tastefully planned. There is a variety of housing style. I think the fact that 82% is shared ownership is also a positive consideration. Unfortunately, in view of the, not unfortunately perhaps, but I think in view of the fact that 82% is shared ownership and that the fact that principal development is already there, I really can't see any reason to refuse this application. And I think that objectors maybe should be careful what they wish for, because any other development may not be as sensitive as perhaps this one is. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bayford. Councillor Rozeski.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, looking at the development, the fact that it's quite tastefully done, we do need more affordable housing in Thanet. It's the area that this development is going to be located. I think it will eventually get its extra shops and that when people do move into the area. So I will support this and go for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Hart.
Thank you, Chair. I'm only just trying to couple of things. I think it's a good idea. I'm not against it per se. But Councillor Rogers mentioned something about a bungalow being opposite for plot 22, but that doesn't seem to have happened. So what's going to happen with that, if the officer can tell me about that? And why is it assumed that somebody in a flat only needs one car? Do they assume that everybody who's going to live in a flat is a single person? You know, why is there only one space for a flat? I just can't get my head quite around that. If the officer can answer that as well, please. Thank you.
Emma, can you come back on possibly one of those?
Yeah, sure. So the flats are only one bed flats. So it's not the case that we would only ask for one parking space because it's a flat. It's just because it's a one bed flat. So therefore it's just expected that only one vehicle is likely to be needed for a one bed unit. And in terms of the bungalow, I do think that I heard that the address being referred to was Oakland Court, which is actually not in relation to this application. It's in relation to the other application, which is south of Cotterton Road, which is not on this agenda. So I think that was the address being referred to. So this one is only affected by the residents in Beech Grove and Lavender Lane, and not Oakland Court.
Thank you, Emma. I can't see any other members wishing to speak, so thank you for that. So I'm going to put it to yourselves that the motion is for approval. Once again, I will call your names out. If you're for it, please for, or against, or abstain. Councillor Coleman-Cook.
For.
Councillor Alban.
For.
Councillor Bayford.
For.
Councillor Curry.
For.
Councillor Garner.
For.
Councillor Hart.
For.
Councillor Rozeski.
For.
Councillor Scott.
For.
Councillor Wright.
For.
Councillor Whitehead.
For.
And myself, I'm for. And I think, Charlotte, that is carried. I don't hear anything, so thank you, Charlotte. On my screen it is. Thank you, members. And I did note earlier on with Councillor Scott that he may have to leave because of his work. So thank you, Matthew, for that. Okay, the motion is carried on that one. So moving on to agenda item C, which is a planning application for approval of the St Peter's Pedestrian at 117 Canterbury Road, Westgate on Sea. Once again, we have some statements to be read out, and if I could ask Mr Hughes, please. I believe you have one from Mr Hume to start with.
Indeed. Yeah, let me just...
Nick and Nick.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is the statement of Mr Hume. Good afternoon, members. This application site comprises the vacant and redundant St Peter's Church, which was closed in July 2014. The size, configuration and construction of the church and everyday operation of the building was costly and inefficient for the limited numbers which last used the building. Upon disposal, the diocese explored a number of alternative options for its use, all of which were unsuccessful. This resulted in the sale of the building after a period of marketing. The church has been vacant in excess of 6 years, with parishioners now served by nearby facilities in Westgate and Churchton. The loss of the church has previously The loss of the church has been previously accepted when granting permission in 2018 for its use as offices. This consent is implementable until June 2021 and represents a fallback position for the applicant. The proposal includes the mixed provision of 14 dwellings as well as 751 square metres of office space close to the heart of Westgate, which will provide economic benefits to the local community with the creation of up to 65 new jobs. The church itself was constructed in 1964 and is neither listed nor locally listed. Officers have agreed the church is of reduced community and aesthetic value. The design of the replacement building has followed extensive engagement with LPA officers and is considered to represent an enhancement to the conservation area. It is acknowledged that the proposed building is larger than the existing church, but the building will stand within a very large plot, and the main 4-storey element will be focused in the centre of the site and well separated from its boundaries. Whilst the site occupies a roadside frontage, the proposed building is set back from the highway edge and will be screened by a dense belt of protected trees which will be retained and enhanced. It is considered that the siting of the proposal and intervening trees, combined with the quality of the proposed build form, will have a positive impact on the character of the area compared with the current buildings. The application has been supported by a number of technical reports, and the proposals are considered to be acceptable in terms of ecology, archaeology, flooding, drainage, and transport. The proposals will also deliver a high quality of residential amenity for existing prospective residential occupants. To summarise, the proposal seeks to optimise the potential of this sustainably located brownfield site and will deliver a quality mixed-use scheme of local housing and employment floor space. Members are respectfully requested to support the application in line with the officer's recommendation. End.
Thank you very much, Nick. I also understand you have a statement of raising points of concern from Ms. Gray.
Indeed.
If you would, Nick.
Yep. Apologies, Chairman. I'm just...
Don't worry. Don't worry. You okay?
Yeah, I'm just waiting for my computer to load.
Okay. You of all people, Nick, the person who shows us all how to work these things.
I know. I shouldn't blame the computer.
No.
Sorry, it's been very slow.
I won't embarrass members or the public by going into a song.
Thank you for that, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Alban, I thought you'd gone to phone you know who. Do you need a handle, Nick?
No, apologies, Chairman. Bear with us for a sec. Hold on, let me just see if I can find another way of finding it. Hold on.
I think we need to contact Democratic Services, Chair.
Well, I was thinking the same. I know, you know, I believe one's on a holiday. You can't get the staff.
No, exactly. She's on a holiday, it all falls apart.
I know.
Right. Okay.
What's a holiday?
Exactly.
Right.
And I always say, I do hope all your families and yourselves are keeping okay in the situations we're in.
Well, we're still here, Chair.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
I think we're very lucky to be living where we all do. I can't imagine being, you know, in an urban area in a flat where you can't get out and about. We're very lucky. We have lovely walks, things like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Steve, do you know when they're closing off Broadstairs High Street?
No, not directly, George. I'm not sure that decision has actually been made yet. I know we're looking at it, but I'm not sure when it actually is, George.
Okay, a lot of people are asking, so it would.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Can I,
These members,
and I hope you mind, members, please, if we can keep to the subject, remember public are possibly watching us, and I think I make sense. I do understand that things are happening with very high streets and so forth, but I think that's for another time, if you don't mind me saying that. Save any embarrassment to anyone. Thank you. Nick, okay?
apologies, committee, about.
Don't worry. Please don't worry.
The comments of Westgate-on-Sea Town Council. Westgate-on-Sea Town Council is not opposed to change. It understands the need for development. However, we feel this application within a conservation area requires compromise to save healthy, mature trees from unnecessary destruction. The Town Council welcomes the relocation of Miles and Barr's main offices to Westgate-on-Sea and is grateful for the possible increased employment in the town. However, the great number of flats proposed on top of the ground floor offices by Kentish Projects has resulted in an extremely large development and large concreted area for associated car parking spaces. It should be noted that this site is not allocated for housing in the local plan. Despite this, the size of this development means that 9 trees are being proposed for removal, many of which are due to car parking. Cutting down trees unnecessarily for car parking is a disgraceful act, even if new trees are planted. Mature trees hold large quantities of carbon, and the planting of new trees does not match the carbon lost for decades. Thanet District Council has agreed to reach net carbon zero by 2030, and so preserving the current tree stock is imperative to save stored carbon. Westgate Town Council welcomes developments which do not cut down trees unless absolutely necessary, and in this case, we feel that it is completely unnecessary. Also, the Canterbury/Minster Road crossroads is a very busy area for traffic, which may become busier with the 2,000 houses allocated on the Westgate fields, allocated through the local plan. It is imperative that we preserve our mature trees in this area, helping to cleanse the air of traffic pollution. These trees also mitigate against surface water flooding and give homes to birds and insects. They give beauty to the area of Westgate, especially along Minster Road, where they can be clearly seen and are greatly valued. Planting new trees will not afford the same value as those mature trees currently in position. The TDC tree officer has written a full report, and we hope that this has been available to you. We are concerned that only advice from the tree specialist employed by the developer was on the TDC portal and not from your own TDC officer. Your officer has given his sound professional advice and is paid by TDC to do this, and has provided a solution rather than just a roadblock to the development. He explains that 2 trees could reasonably be relocated for the development to take place, and the town council agrees with this. After careful consideration, he concludes that the large mature holm oak trees, which the developer wants to remove for car parking, should not be removed, but should still be protected. He then explains in detail how this can be achieved whilst at the same time still allowing car parking and allowing the development to move forwards. We agree that the large mature holm oak trees proposed to be cut down within this conservation area should be protected, and that this development should only be approved with conditions attached. The TDC tree officer's clear plan should be seriously considered as a reasonable outcome and compromise, which saves these grand trees and allows development at the same time. End. Sorry about that, Chairman.
No, don't worry, Nick. These things happen. Thank you very much. Speaking as ward councillor, Councillor Braidwood.
Hiya, can everyone hear me okay?
We can, I think. Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Chair. The application looks to make productive use of a currently unoccupied area of land. The application also has intent to make a meaningful contribution towards the supply and delivery of much needed local housing and office space. I'm talking positive about this application because I'm very supportive of development. However, this particular application does not respect the conservation area and the building within it. Westgate Town Council have objected. Westgate-on-Sea Conservation Area Advisory Group have objected. Milegate Civic Society have objected, as well as many residents. In my opinion, this proposal is purely led by a commercial desire to maximise the profit potential. A 4-storey flat roof structure shows a remarkable lack of empathy for the immediate surroundings, as well as having a huge impact for the neighbouring property. The current building has architectural importance, similar to Westgate Library, which is just across the road. In my opinion, this building would be best served as a community area or another non-profit use. Westgate already has an allocation of 2,000 houses in the local plan, so we simply don't need to remove a piece of architectural importance to make way for more homes. I would urge this committee to go against the officer's recommendation and completely reject this proposal until a more aesthetically pleasing application is submitted. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Braidwood. Also speaking as a ward councillor, Councillor Bainbridge.
Thank you, Chair. Just unmuted my mic. Yes, Councillor Bainbridge, Westgate-on-Sea ward. I spoke on this last time it came to committee in support of the application, as I could see the benefits to Westgate of renovating this site. I appreciate the plans have changed and the building. I appreciate the plans have changed and that the building is now going to be replaced and constructed as offices on the ground floor and apartments on the upper 3 levels. I've looked at the plans and I think the building is of an attractive design. I don't think I'm looking at the same plans that, like maybe Councillor Braidwood was looking at, because I thought this building looked nice. And I feel like it is in keeping with the street scene. I know that it's actually at a lower height than the building next door, and that the impact on neighbouring properties does not appear to be any different than that of the existing property in terms of light, with no physical overshadowing. Traffic and Highways agree in principle. I know they've stipulated some conditions that I think will be able to be met by the developers, and the protected trees are being maintained and new trees are being planted. The pluses for Westgate are that this development will bring 65 plus jobs to the area, where Mars & Bar will set up their head office. This will have a positive impact on the shops and cafes that will gain trade in the area. Westgate doesn't have many large employers, so this one would be very welcome. We also need high quality housing, and this development also provides welcome additional homes in Westgate. The last thing I want to see is another derelict building sitting there going to rot for years and years to come. This building has already been left deserted for 6+ years, so the opportunity to develop the site is very positive for the area. In my opinion, the objections are far outweighed by the benefits of quality housing and new employment opportunities and the associated trade from these employees, which will benefit the town of Westgate. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Banbridge. The planning officer will now, I believe it is Ian, if I'm...
That's correct, Chair.
Thank you, Ian. If you would present your report, please.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members. Hopefully you'll be able to see my screen now. So the application is, just to confirm, it's a recommendation for defer and delegate for approval, and it's for the St Peter's Presbytery site that is on 117 Canterbury Road. So the proposal is to demolish the buildings on site and to erect a 4-storey, part 3-storey building with ground floor commercial offices and 14 flats spread over the 3 upper floors. So the principal issues that members are considering is the principle of development, the impact on the conservation area, as well as the impact on the setting of the adjacent listed building, the impact on neighbours, the impact on trees on the site, highway safety, as well as other planning matters such as archaeology, ecology, and so on. So the site is in the centre of the image here. So this is an aerial view looking towards the south. So you can see the existing building. Then to the left of the site, as you looked at it from the main Canterbury Road, you have 115. To the right-hand side, you have the building known as Summerlands, which is 119 Canterbury Road, which is a Grade 2 listed building. Then at the rear, you have Countess Mountbatten Court, which is retirement housing. And then you can see behind the sort of south part of Westgate, and you've got St Augustine's and the relatively recent housing development around the back of that to the west of this site. To show you a bit more detail, so turning round and now looking north, you can see the relationship between the main property with the pitched roof and the trees at the front of the site. So you can see that the site is set within the middle of the plot, and you can see some of the landscaping that's surrounding and within the site. And also you can see Minster Road here, which is obviously to the east of the site, of which this site does have a frontage onto. So this is a view from across the road on the Canterbury Road towards the site. So you can see the trees at the front there, obscuring the view of the church in this image. So these trees at the front are subject of a tree preservation order from 1956. Then this is a view looking towards 115 Canterbury Road, which is a residential property that is on the corner of Minster Road and Canterbury Road. Then this is just a further back view showing the trees that are on site at the moment, which obviously have a very significant contribution to this part of the conservation area and the character of the area, and are all protected. Then looking towards the relationship with the property Summerlands next door, you can just see the glimpses of Summerlands behind the trees at the front. And here's another view in just showing Summerlands. And then I'm going to just show you a view which is actually from Google Street View, so to see a little bit more of what that building looks like. We talked about this last time the previous application came before members. This site is subject to enforcement action. There are outstanding enforcement notices on this property, and further movement in terms of prosecutions are moving forward as soon as the courts reopen on those notices and not being complied with them, just to give members an update on that. But that is a Grade 2 listed building, so it's very important that the considerations are given to how the development adjacent could impact on the setting of this building. So then this is sort of on the edge of the boundary between those two sites, looking through towards the church, and you can see the protected trees again in the foreground of the image. Now, sort of turning to the right from this image, looking down into the site adjacent to Summerlands. So this is actually within the red line, but is actually looking down the length with the church on the left of the image here, and Summerlands on the right-hand side. And this is actually the route that goes down to the Countess Mountbatten Court properties at the rear. So there is a right of access over part of the land that's within the red line of this site. And this access is not changed by the proposal, just to clarify that in terms of making sure that there's still a route down into that site. Then into the site, this is the building in question. Just to pick up another question that may come up in advance of that, there is an outstanding enforcement case with regards to the current use of this building. It's being used at the moment for furniture storage, as you can quite clearly evidence by this image, as well as for retail use on that ground floor. We have required either an application is submitted or the use ceases through the enforcement case. But this is obviously primarily an image just to show you the building itself. In turn to the left from that image, and within the parking area at the moment in the site that we're looking at, you can see the side elevation of 115 Canterbury Road. So this is also slightly unique in terms of its access arrangements, because it's accessed via the existing access into 117. So you can see where the red car is. That's actually the access point into the property. So it's not accessed 115 from Canterbury Road or from Minster Road. But also it's worth drawing to members' attention the openness of the front and side gardens at this point of the site. And then turning to the right from this view, you can see just in the background here, you can see the presbytery itself, which is a single bungalow that's on the site that's demolished. And you can see a number of the trees that are present on the site. So it's got some low trees here, and then you've got a primary tree that you can see through the existing canopy of the protected tree up here. You can see that there's a tree that's set into the site in this vicinity here. This is one of the trees that's being retained, and that is also a tree that is shown as being covered by the tree preservation order previously. So this is now a view looking back towards 115, so the neighbouring property, which is the right-hand side of the image, looking back, and you can see on the left-hand side you have the actual presbytery and the actual bungalow residential part of the property on the left-hand side. So you've got one of the trees here that's proposed to be removed, and moving back you have this leaning tree here. So this is just going back for a few steps from the previous image, so you can still see on the right hand side 115, and then the building to be demolished. So we'll run through the specifics of the tree plans when we look at the plans. Then turning around and looking towards, sorry, there you go, there's another image of those trees in particular in the bungalow on the left hand side. So then moving towards looking at the relationship with Minster Road particularly. So this is an image taken looking, I suppose, towards the southeast of the site, in the corner looking towards Minster Road. These are two of the trees that are identified on the plans. The tree which is on the left hand side, which is the larger of the trees in this group, is to be retained, with the other tree on the right hand side proposed for removal. Then moving to turn to the right from the image you're looking at and looking at the rear boundary of the site, we have the Countess Mountbatten Court is to the rear here. You can see the rear of the church on the right hand side of this image, and then you have the trees that form the back boundary and the screening between the church site and the residential retirement flats at the rear. So these two trees here are proposed to be retained. And then moving forward sort of into this image, you can then see these two trees. So both of these trees are protected trees. They were protected by virtue of a tree preservation order in 2009 when an assessment was made on the trees on this site, and these trees were considered to be worthy of retention and preservation at that point. So as outlined, one of the key issues is the principle of development. This application is reported to members as a departure from the local plan policy CM02 because it represents the loss of the existing community facility. It has, however, been outlined by the public speaking that there is a previous application that was approved by members in 2018, which looked at converting the existing building and losing the community facility on the basis of the benefits from the economic development that was a result from the commercial office use. At the same time, a determination was made that that would also not constitute an issue with regards to the vitality and vibrancy of the district centre at Westgate and indeed the other town centres, because it would propose to have an office use outside of those centres without providing a sequential assessment. So in terms of considering this application, applying the very significant material planning consideration, which is members' previous decision on the weighing up of these matters, it's considered that the economic benefits of the commercial offices and now the additional 14 residential units outweigh the loss of the community facility and the potential impact on the town centre. So looking through the elevations of the existing building, the report identifies that the loss of the existing building, the conservation area, is also a key consideration to be taken into account. The building itself is unique in its context. As already mentioned, it's not a historic building, particularly in terms of age, but it does reflect quite a few of the significant characteristics that are found with development in the conservation area, because in terms of the development, it is notably set back from the frontage. It has quite a lot of space around it in terms of its relationship with other buildings, and it's also quite large in terms of its scale. So it is considered that this building does have a positive contribution to the conservation area. However, it isn't considered that this building is a non-designated heritage asset by virtue of its form as well as the age of the building, and it's not considered that it contributes significantly to those particular features of the Westgate conservation area and its historic development. However, because it does have a positive contribution to the conservation area, it is then important to consider whether or not the new development would preserve that positive contribution, and therefore it sets a high bar in terms of the design of the development, as well as the impact and considering the impact on the setting of the listed building next door. So in terms of the considerations of the proposed development, so what has been proposed is to retain a lot of the features of the layout of the site as it currently is, trying to maintain the sense of space from the frontage of the development. So it's set back as well as also having space either side of it akin to the scale of the development that was previously on the site. One thing to point out to members when we move towards looking at the elevations is to draw members' attention to the fact the actual footprint of the development, because you can see that you've got a frontage section of the building here, which is stepped back at different points with a central gable feature, which we'll look at. However, the two wings of the development are set back from the main frontage by 10 metres. So there is quite a significant articulation in the built form that's being proposed. As well as that, it's important to note that whilst the building is 4-storey in the centre of the building, it's 3 stories either side and also single-storey at the rear. So you have this black line noting the extent to which the building is 4 stories in height. So looking at the elevation of the building, as mentioned, within the applicant's statement, this application has been in for over a year now, because we've been negotiating over the design and making various requests for changes to the scheme. And so this is the final set of elevations that we're considering today. So you can see that the design approach has been to adopt more of a traditional approach to the built form when looking at the building adjacent with both Summerlands and also 115, particularly looking at the fenestration pattern with the pitched roofs, but also the symmetry that's found within the development. And we do consider that the form of development that's been proposed respects the significance of that area in terms of those particular points which do contribute towards the conservation area in terms of the site at the moment. So looking in a bit more detail at the proposal. So here are the wings of the development, which, as mentioned, is set back by 10 metres. So if members can think about reading this as a 3D image rather than the flat 2D image that's in front of them. So you have the central core, which is trying to take the characteristics of the existing building, which is obviously sort of forms a central emphasis within the site. And then looking through at the rear elevation, you can see on the ground floor the single story section of the building. And then that's also shown on the side elevation. So this is the west elevation looking towards Summerlands. And then this is the east elevation looking towards Minster Road. In terms of a particular point with regards to the impact on neighbouring properties, one of the concerns that was raised is the potential for overlooking from upper floor windows with regards to the rear garden area of 115 Canterbury Road, and the windows at the front of the building here on first and second floor level are to be obscure glazed and fixed shut. And when we look at the floor plans, you'll see which windows they serve. So this is just a view to show the relationship between the parking and the existing building. So overall, the scale of development with regards to the setback is considered to respect the character of the conservation area. It's also noted and important to look at the fact of the relationship between the listed building next door. It is considered that the development would not compete with the listed building next door due to the degree of separation that's proposed. As part of this, the amendments, the wings have been set down from the originally proposed scale of the building. And just to show you what that looked like previously, it was previously proposed when it was submitted a slightly more modern design like this, which obviously then was changed to try and reflect more the historic character of the area, but also setting it down in terms of the relationship with the listed building next door. And so we do feel that the harm to the listed building, or the setting of the listed building, which will inherently come from the increase in scale of a building on the site in comparison to what's there at the moment, has been minimized by virtue of the design. And just taking a bit more of a detailed look at that design, because as members will often be pointing out, that it's all important with regards to the actual standard, the materials that this building is to be constructed in. So we have actually got up front the details of the materials in terms of the particular color. So you can see here about the actual particular specifics of the brickwork, as well as the brick banding and the colors of the bricks to be proposed there. In terms of the front and central core of the building, the ground floor of that is to be slightly differently detailed in terms of the brickwork that's being used, but also in terms of how the return elevations are connected to the front facade in terms of the articulation of the different courses of brickwork. So we do consider that on the basis of the information that's been provided, which would be conditioned, that the materials within the conservation area would reflect the vernacular materials that are found in the area. In terms of the consideration of neighbouring properties, I mentioned about the windows that are on the return elevation here being obscure glazed. So that's to avoid impact on the private amenity space of 115 Canterbury Road here and also here. In terms of the relationship with the Countess Mountbatten Court, this is something that was looked at in quite a lot of detail and is contained within the officer report. We're looking at it's an 18-metre distance to the rear boundary from the 4-storey elements of the building here to the rear boundary. And then there's subsequently a 9-metre distance the other side of the boundary to the actual windows themselves. So that distance is considered sufficient to avoid a significant impact. There is also protected trees in the vicinity of this site, as well as the trees that are to be retained and therefore conditioned for retention within the application as well. And that relationship, therefore, is considered to be acceptable without resulting in a significant harm to the neighbouring property. Just to go through the floor plans, this is the ground floor plan showing the office development that's proposed. And then moving up through the floors, we have the first floor plan, and then the second floor plan, which looks very similar. But then the third floor plan is obviously showing the central core of the building, which is the 4-story element. So just going down to the first and second floor, you can see that the side windows that I was referring to be obscure glazed are in this area. So they are secondary windows to the kitchen with a primary window at the front. All of the flats that are proposed meet the nationally described space standards that are required through local plan policy QD04. And then there's the roof plan. So this plan shows the extent of the development on the site in red at the moment in comparison with the extent of development. So as mentioned, there is an increase in the built form of the site on the site, but it does reflect the location of where the development is at the moment. So just to pick up the concerns that have been raised about trees. So this is a plan showing the protected trees indicated via the tree preservation orders on the site. So it outlines the trees at the front that are protected. The TPO has been extended at this point to include the TPO that I referenced when we were looking at the images from the front that are here. And then in 2009, an assessment was done, which has then protected these two trees here on the site. The site is in a conservation area, so the other trees are protected by virtue of being in a conservation area, which normally would mean that through a Section 211 application or notification, then the works could occur to the trees, but the applicant has to put a notification into us before that, so that we would make a determination as to whether or not we would TPO trees or raise no objections, which are the only options that we have on those. But obviously this is proposed through the planning application, and a planning application supersedes TPO legislation. So it's for consideration today. So this is the plan that's been submitted with the application, which shows the extent of the trees on the site at the moment. Obviously, some of the comments that have come in relate to the loss of the trees in the site. The rationale that's been put forward is the particular need to get the amount of car parking that's required for the redevelopment of the site, whilst also retaining the most prominent trees. To give you some sort of idea of the trees on the site, there are 33 trees on the site, and the development proposes to remove 8 of those trees, and the 15 TPOs that are protected are all proposed to be retained as part of it. So you can see here that the trees in the centre of the site have been proposed to be removed to accommodate from the parking area, with specific provisos made to ensure that the trees that provide the screening between the two developments are to be retained, and including protective fencing, as shown by the blue fencing here, that's to be erected as part of the scheme. So this is just to show the protective fencing. Following the comments that have been put forward by the arboricultural officer, we have gone back to the applicant and requested that there's a further work done in terms of what could be retained within the scheme, and both balancing up the requirement for car parking on the site with regards to the amenity that's offered by the trees. What's been proposed is to sort of retain one additional tree, so it's only 8 removed. Originally it was 9 that were to be removed originally, but it has also included additional planting that's proposed with the proposal, which includes it's 10 trees in total, including 6 silver birch specifically in this facility over here, so directly adjacent to where the Minster Road is. So just going through the photos to show you the relevance of these particular trees. This is a view looking back towards the site and the backdrop within the area. And so at the end here, you can see the traffic lights on the right-hand side of the image, as well as 115 Canterbury Road. So these trees that are present here are the highway trees. So they're actually set on the public highway, so they're not part of this site at all. Then you have this tree here, which is one of the trees for retention on the site. But then the main backdrop of the trees, which is behind the neighbouring property on Minster Road, and we're just going to look at it on this image, which is from Google, to get a bit of an elevated view. You can see the backdrop of the trees in particular. So as mentioned, the highest tree on the boundary is to be retained, which is this tree here, and it's the central trees that are to be thinned out with regards to accommodating the parking area in particular. And so using Google, just to give members a sort of an idea of the 3D nature of this site. So this is an impression that's taken from Google. You can see that you've got the highways trees in this area here. Again, this is using satellite imagery, so it's to be taken account of on that basis. Then you have the 2 trees to be retained, which are the ones that are clearly visible from the road. You then have trees to be retained in this area here, so the ones that screen both the neighbour from the Countess Mountbatten Court, which is in the top left part of the image. But then it's the area of trees here which is to be thinned out. You can see again, here's the bungalow element of the building to be demolished. So it's this area here which is accommodating the car parking, with then the trees at the very top of the image all being retained to continue the relationship between the neighbouring property at Countess Mountbatten Court and this and the proposed scheme. So it's regrettable in terms of the loss of the trees. We do think that should be balanced against the benefits of the proposal and also the provision of new trees, as well as the retention of the vast majority of the existing trees on the site. So in terms of other planning considerations, parking, there are 47 spaces proposed. That is obviously to accommodate for an office development as well as the 14 residential flats. They are proposing to slightly widen the vehicular access because Highways requested that for safety purposes, but it can only be widened to about 4.8 metres because of the fact that you've got protected trees at the front of the site. And obviously the key is to not damage any of those protected trees at the front of the site. This parking provision, as indicated, does include particularly disabled bays in regards to the site, but also would include 8 electric vehicle charging points to serve the development. In terms of the other considerations, there's a heads of terms section in the report, which is identifying contributions from the 14 residential units proposed. That includes a contribution towards the strategic access management and monitoring plan, as well as education, community learning, youth services, library book stock, social care and waste services. There is a safeguarding condition with regards to archaeology, as well as additional environmental ecology surveys to come in, predominantly about a precautionary principle with regards to a potential for roosting bats. So there are a number of other planning matters which have been put forward to be dealt with via condition, but also through a legal agreement to secure those particular contributions. So overall, it is considered that there are substantial social and economic benefits from the proposal. There is environmental harm by virtue of the loss of the building in terms of its contribution to the conservation area, and the expansion of built form on the site in terms of relationship with the neighbouring property, the listed building. However, that has been mitigated substantially by the revised design to minimise that harm, and therefore it is considered, taking into account all relevant planning considerations, that the application should be recommended for defer and delegate to officers for approval, subject to the receipt of a unilateral undertaking to secure the contributions, as well as also the safety conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Ian. I move that the officer's recommendation is adopted. Could I have the Vice Chair please second?
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman-Cook. I'm going to ask, if I may, and I know Councillor Scott wants to, because of his work, has got to move. Ian, if I may ask you, I mean, if I've missed this on the report, and it might not be on the report, it was a church. In the mind somewhere through our training over the years and so on planning, because it was a church, has this been deconsecrated? Do you know, would that cause, it may be a difficult one to, but it's only something in the mind where a new build is going up onto a site that has, has had a religious building on for a number of years? I don't know if you can answer.
Yeah, I believe this was it was looked at when we looked at the previous application. It is slightly separate from a material planning consideration, but as referenced, it hasn't been churched for quite a significant amount of time, and I believe the sort of parishioners have been sort of split up separately into other facilities. So it's not something that weighs in terms of the determination that members would be making today.
Okay. All right, thank you for that. It's only purely, you know, if it goes ahead and so on, something could come and bite us. Members, I've got Councillor Scott. If you're still there.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, many thanks. Yeah, I had a lot to say about this, but yeah, I'm going to have to certainly keep it very brief, but I think that'll be a blessing for everyone. I mean, it's echo sort of, obviously this is within my ward, some of the points raised by our two ward councillors as well as the Westgate Town Council. I mean, as always, it's always great to have any sort of potential job opportunity, especially back into Thanet. It's always welcomed. I mean, obviously, Thanet is an area that is screaming to have opportunities for jobs, and for this particular applicant to bring that back into Westgate itself would be really great. I mean, it has the benefits of being built on a potential brownfield site, obviously potential job income, and also for the town itself, potential for revenue for the businesses and the town. I mean, I do have quite a few concerns. I mean, one of the original concerns was actually the development of the actual, the original proposed development of the building, which, based on today's sort of presentation, has really sort of cleared things up. I mean, the first one was very much not in any way in keeping with the area. It looked like a bit of a holiday home you would expect to get in Spain, and certainly didn't fit within sort of the aspects of Westgate at that particular time. So the newer sort of development does certainly fit-ish into the actual area. I mean, I'm still a bit concerned about the actual overall height. But one of the key things I was mainly concerned with was the traffic concerns, which I'm a bit surprised to being sort of approved by KCC with the access, really. Very close to, obviously, a crossing way. It's a 40-mile-per-hour speed road. Obviously, being so close to the traffic lights, a lot of cars have been seen and known to sort of speed up to hit those particular light switch-ins from yellow to red, and for this to be sort of the only access in and out, especially around these sort of rat race runs between 9 o'clock, 5 o'clock, when businesses do tend to sort of finish and pack up. Just a bit of concern, really, sort of potential accidents to happen, the tightness of it overall, and also the fact that it's very close to a main bus stop as well. So, I mean, that road in itself will get extremely busy. And obviously, I know we are looking at just the principal application, but as Westgate will undoubtedly get bigger, those roads will get certainly busier. So that was one thing I really wanted to sort of address, and hopefully the officer can come back, sort of sway those concerns, because at the moment, that is a very, very dense place to have a lot of movement around. I mean, it's answered a few others in relation to sort of the out of character. I know and noted a lot of the objections from residents that it's been undesirable. Obviously, I know we could sort of sometimes chalk it up to not in my backyard principles, and I know we do need sort of development here. So I'm very conflicted overall, but yeah, that was my key aspect, really, just that particular issue in the first instance. The only other one to address was the trees, which I think Ian pretty much covered very well. The only ones that have been highlighted here where I've been given sort of the tree officer's report is T18, T19, T20, T21 and T22, which I believe was on that proposed car parking area. The other says here with sort of particular careful planning and strategic planning, those trees could actually be retained. So I'm wondering if that has actually been sort of investigated a bit more. And yeah.
Ian, can you come back on that?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Chair. In terms of picking up the point about the highways concerns, I certainly know what Councillor Scott is saying here, and it is something that we were looking at in quite a bit of detail. You'll see in the report that there is an initial comment from KCC and then a subsequent comment, because whilst there is an existing access there, and that does weigh sort of heavily in favour of redevelopment of this site, because obviously highways have to take account of the fact that, well, theoretically this building could be used for a use class in D1, which could be used for obviously a church, but also other uses without needing planning permission, which would lead to movements in and out of that existing access. But also obviously taking account of the particular safety concerns and the relationship with the traffic lights. In this instance, KCC, obviously, who look at crash data when making their recommendations, have considered that it's acceptable. And I think in terms of the particular relationship with the traffic lights, I take the point in terms of cars potentially speeding up to hit those traffic lights. Obviously, because of the way that traffic lights are timed, if a car has turned into this road and then is turning into the access, then obviously the expectation will be that they've moved out of the two carriageways by the time the next lot of traffic lights are potentially on. So they're potentially at the end of that stage. And it is something that highways looked at specifically to ensure that it's suitable and safe. To pick up the point with regards to trees, I just quickly will present my screen again to members just to talk about this particular point, because it is something that obviously we're very mindful of. And reading out obviously the Arboricultural Officer of TDC's comment, specifically what's being looked at, and you'll be able to see it in this area here, are the dotted lines which are present, which are on the parking area. Now, of those trees that were cited, so T sort of 18 to 22, T19 is a category U tree, and it's got significant and extensive decay within it. So that wouldn't be suitable to be retained anyway. With regards to the other trees, we have looked at the potential that was put forward by the Arboricultural Officer about how it could be planned around. But fundamentally, you'll see by the way that this site is set up, as well as the location of the trees being retained, as well as the side boundary of the neighbouring property, to provide the amount of car parking that's needed to support the office use as well as the 14 residential units, does require parking provision in this vicinity. And due to the relationship with the proposed building, these trees that are sort of in the central part of the driveway aren't considered sort of able to be retained, even with the sort of creative solutions that are being proposed. Obviously, the trees on the edge of this area, including this tree here, is being protected because it overhangs this area, and this is where there's the particular use of, I think it's geocell is what it's called, where you have effectively almost like mesh above the parking area, so you don't compact the soil and you don't actually have to tarmac it. But it's not considered that that's going to work with obviously the presence of a trunk of a tree directly in that driveway, which, as you can see, is limited in terms of where it can be planned into the development. So that has been looked at, that particular suggestion, and therefore it's a weighing up process for members in terms of considering whether or not the demonstrable benefits that this provides, as well as the retention of the trees that are on the actual, again, the main frontage of Minster Road, as well as the relationship between the rears of the properties. So obviously that's where the parking could go, but obviously it's been decided that it's the trees in the central part of the site that obviously don't have as much visual amenity value in the conservation area as the others are the ones, unfortunately, that would be proposed to be removed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ian. Councillor Bayford.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sorry, to some degree my comments have been sort of preempted, but in general, I'm in favour of this application in design, with the opportunities for employment and the additional housing. But I'm afraid I'm coming back to the trees. It seems to me that the removal of these 8 trees is something which is desirable and convenient to development rather than essential. I think Ian's to some degree answer this question, but I just wondered whether with careful tree management, their removal, or at least removal of the healthy ones, could be avoided. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you want to come back, Ian? Although I think you have.
Sort of has, yes.
I think you really have answered.
Yeah, sorry, I probably cover this in my my original comment.
I don't think so. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Hart.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a few comments on this because I drive past this place a lot, and I know how dangerous that road is, and I don't think that having 65 people come to work and driving in and out a day, twice a day, is probably the best place that close to the roundabout, to the traffic lights. I mean, this was used as a church. Most of the people went to the church for a funeral. Then nobody was buried there. But they went there for a funeral, or they went there on a Sunday when the roads were quieter, not on 9 to 5 during the week. And a lot of these are going to be transient people because by admission, it's going to be Miles and Bar's headquarters. So there's going to be a lot of people driving there. So if they're expecting 65 people to work there, let's assume 60 of them are going to drive because they're coming out of town. You haven't got enough spaces for them, let alone for the 14 flats that you've already got. My other comment is, and I'm really not for this, I think it's overdeveloped myself, but I mean, if you also look at the 2 trees that you were going to take out, you're going to take one of them out, which means that possibly, I think that was the 2019 agreement, the TPO that went on. If you're going to take the right-hand one out, unless it's a misleading photograph, that could then overbalance or outbalance the left-hand tree and also then cause damage to the roots. Are you going to grind that stump out because you need access? If you're going to grind that stump out, are you then going to damage the ongoing roots for the tree that's been left? And I think that could be a visual mistake by me, hands up. Are you going to put in permeable hardscaping for the trees that are remaining so they actually still get water rather than just hardscaping? I just don't think this is the right development for this area. I think it's too overdone. I mean, there's not even a side access to go into Minster Road where you could actually alleviate people coming out of that or going into the actual area that is going to be used. And I think you can't have people turning right out of that place because it's so on top of the traffic lights. You can't have a right turn out of there. So everybody's going to have to go left, and then you're going to have delays further down and turning around as you do that people go into the other estate behind the Ursuline, and that causes enough problems as it is with people coming up on the backs of people very fast. So I don't think for the amount of traffic that this is going to be used is an ideal situation. And if you could come back on that, Mr Livingston, I'd be very grateful. Thank you.
Ian?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So to come back on the highways point, obviously the previous application has approved the conversion of the existing building for offices. In fact, for the same, broadly the same amount of office floor space that's being proposed. So that is an extant permission, therefore forms a material consideration in terms of this new proposal. So over and above what's already got consent are the 14 units. So that's the element of things that obviously highways have particularly looked at, as well as obviously comparing it to the church. And I take your point, Councillor Hart, obviously in terms of use of the church, you would, obviously pretty obvious that it's going to be busier on a Sunday, but at the same time, obviously, churches are used for other events throughout the week. But highways have obviously looked at it. We would only object to something on highways grounds when we have sort of strategic and evidential support by highways that there is a specific harm that would be created. In this instance, in terms of suggestions as to connecting the Minster Road sort of part of the site with regards to an access there, you're right, there is no proposed access at that point. And there certainly isn't proposed, obviously, for any vehicular access, because these days highways wouldn't allow a new access to be created so close to the traffic lights. So it would only be a pedestrian access, but that isn't what's being proposed in this instance. To come back with regards to the points about the protected trees and those to be removed. So we have had submitted an additional tree sort of plan, which is the most recent sort of statement that's been put through. It also condition 22 on the proposed approval includes the requirement for a precautionary method statement. That is particularly to do with minimising the impact on roosting bats, but it does also extend to actually how they're going to do it, as well as how they're going to protect the existing trees, which is covered by condition 25. So inevitably, because of the removal of the trees on this site, we are going to have to be very hot on making sure that when that's carried out, it's carried out in accordance with council officers, on site to ensure that the trees that are to be protected are present. You have a condition which is requiring that any excavations within the existing spread of the trees must be done sort of manually with handheld tools. So there is the ability to get further information in before they do it, and as well as that, obviously to make sure that they accord with the requirements of the method statement as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ian. Councillor Garner.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, I have a number of different concerns about this application. The first one that's been mentioned by Councillors Bayford and Hart, to do with the trees. And I think the Westgate-on-Sea Town Council representation put it better than any of us could put. It's such a shame to see so many trees being lost, especially in the current climate of a climate emergency, for the sake of a few extra car parking spaces. And while I possibly wouldn't, because of a number of other issues I have with this, I wouldn't necessarily support it anyway. But it really is a shame that the arboricultural officers' recommendations aren't listened to more on this application. Other concerns I have, I'll go through a couple of them. I note in the report TDC housing, because it sort of raised a red light to me when I noted 14 flats being built here rather than 15, which of course would have required affordable housing to be included. And I noticed that TDC housing said that supportive comments had been provided on the original application, which included 30% affordable housing prior to amendments. When I'm reading that as the developer has, as they've increased the size of this development, have actually reduced the number of accommodations, meaning that we're losing affordable housing. I also note that the conservation officer has stated that this development is larger than was originally planned, and does have some concerns about the whole scheme. And I will also note that there are, while it's nice to see conditions around the protection of bats and nesting birds, unfortunately, what bats and nesting birds there are that use this site are going to be massively disturbed during this development, and I think that needs to be taken into consideration when this is done, because as many bat boxes as you put up, there's not going to be as many about as there are at the moment after this is completed. And one other concern I had, which has been mentioned around KCC highways not raising that many issues. I drove up there this morning, and I'm very surprised that that they don't have any issues, and I don't quite understand that myself. But obviously they're the experts. But I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garner. Ian, you wish to come back on that?
Thank you, Chair. Just to come back on the affordable housing point. So originally it was proposed to provide. I'm actually, I must admit, I don't have the specific number, but I believe it was 15 or over units within the scheme. But actually, as part of amendments that have been received, the number of units went below the 14 to 14 units, which is why originally, when proposed, it included affordable housing, but then it was reduced to go underneath the threshold that this application is considered under. So it's a regrettable requirement from the change in design, which was fundamentally to reduce the scale of the development to accord fit in more with the conservation area and the listed building. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ian. Councillor Alban, hadn't forgotten you. Councillor Alban, you wish... He's looking up into the sky. Councillor Alban.
Sorry, Chair, my microphone wouldn't come on.
No, fine.
I had a question first. I just wanted to know the height of the listed building next door. Is the new development at the same height, or is it lower, or is it higher? If Ian could answer that first, please, Chair.
Ian, I think it's lower, isn't it?
Yeah, so what I'll just quickly do, sorry, I'll just present my screen to show you the street scene. So hopefully that will in a second come up. So you can see that the eaves height of I don't know whether can you hopefully you can see the screen now.
No, not yet.
The eaves height of the building is higher. The ridge height of the listed building obviously modulates quite significantly because of the chimneys that you've got on there. So the ridge height of the main body of the roof on this property is taller than the main body of the listed building here, which is one of the reasons why the overall height of the building was, it was originally higher and wider than this, which is why it's been amended to try and give the separation distance between it. So whilst it's seen in the same context, in terms of when you are actually on the ground level, that you wouldn't perceive that change in height because of the nature of the spacing between them, but also the heights of the buildings. So we have had a look at the issue of height, particularly with regards to the listed building. Obviously, the building that's on the site is not as tall as the proposed building that's proposed, nor is it as wide. But obviously, we feel that the site itself and the character of the conservation area does support a larger building and could support it without having a significantly harmful effect on the particular designated heritage assets.
Okay. Can I continue, Chair?
Yes, carry on, Councillor Alban.
Yeah, I support both Councillor Bayford, Councillor Hart, and Councillor Scott in their views. I too have real concerns in relation to the removal of the trees, as I see as unnecessary. The one regret that I have, because I'm going to vote against this application, is the job issues. Where we were going to. It was going to create a number of jobs, but I do believe this development is too bulky for the site, and I'm concerned about the loss of the trees. So on that basis, I will be voting against. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Alban. Councillor Coleman-Cook.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've got a couple of points. We gave permission in 2018 for this to become offices and create lots of local jobs, and that didn't happen. Then the next thing, the applicants put in for some housing and office, but it was a bit over the top, so they cut it down to 14. So it just seems to me that, again, they got permission to do something, then they backpedaled, then they put in something else and realised what was going to happen, so backpedaled again down to 14. Personally, and the fact, of course, that there's a nice little furniture shop, by the way, on that side a minute. If you need any second-hand furniture. Personally, I'm totally against it. So we'll be voting against this application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman-Cook. Councillor Hart, you wish to come back? David?
Yeah. Yes, please, Chair. Thank you. Sorry about that. Just a quick question. To resolve some of the issues regarding this, couldn't they just have an underground car park, Ian?
Sorry, Chair.
Go on, Ian. Off you go.
Thank you. I would suggest that the potential to undermine the protected trees on the site, as well as the majority of the trees, and as well as the potential, well, not that it's a particular consideration of mine or as the local planning authority, but I'd imagine the costs would be quite prohibitive to providing that sort of arrangement with regards to this development. But I think it would be more the concern from my side of things about the potential to undermine the existing facilities the existing trees that are there.
Thank you, Ian. I do note. Thank you, Matthew. I thought you disappeared already, but I can't see anybody else. Oh, sorry, yes, there is. We've got two other speakers. Councillor Curry.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to add, I agree with many of the members' points. I do feel particular issues have not been satisfactorily addressed by the developer, and I will be voting against this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you very much. I'd like to echo concerns both in relation to the provision of parking spaces and the retention of very mature and significant trees. So, yes, I would like to echo concerns expressed by, I think, several members now. Thank you.
Thank you. This time I can't see any other speakers, so I'm going to put this to you. As always, I have to recommend the motion of the officers, which is to approve and deferral. And I go through your names again, please. Yes, no, or abstain. I think we're getting used to this. Councillor Coleman-Cook.
No, Chair.
Councillor Orban.
Against.
Councillor Bayford.
Against.
Councillor Curry.
Against.
Councillor Garner.
Against.
Councillor Hart.
Against, Chair.
Councillor Rozeski.
Against.
Councillor Scott, if you're still there.
Against, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Wright.
Against.
Councillor Whitehead.
Against.
And I'm going to abstain on this one, on this occasion. The motion is lost. Ian, over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. Obviously that's a pretty clear indication of the concerns that the members have. What I think from sort of going through the particular concerns, whilst there have been individual concerns about the scale of the development, the particular points that have been raised relate to the loss of the trees on the site, particular issue to do with highway safety. As I've mentioned, the highway safety issue is something that is picked up through the KCC comments, and I would raise concerns about refusing an application on what is, legitimate but is more anecdotal evidence of concerns about highways in comparison to the assessment that's been done. However, obviously the trees are clearly the key issue with regards to this site. As I've mentioned, we have pursued and attempted to pursue a change to the layout to try and retain as many of those trees as possible. However, I would suggest, given that there are benefits to this proposed scheme, that one suggestion that I would put forward to members, if a member was so minded to move a motion, would be that the application is deferred back to officers to pursue a reduction in parking if agreement with highways can be reached for that, to try and retain as many of the mature trees as possible, and then report that back to members at a future committee meeting, either with a proposed resolution which shows new plans, a new arrangement with regards to keeping those trees on site, or if no resolution can be reached, potential grounds for refusal of the application. So that is what I would recommend members do, given the concerns that have been raised. I don't know whether any members, rather than move, members have a particular comment on that, or any queries about what we've already discussed.
Members, I think obviously Ian's answered that fairly well. Now, is there any member wishes to sort of comment?
Please, Chair.
Councillor Hart?
Yes, please, Chair. I mean, my only concern, Ian, I approve of what you're trying to get at and what you're trying to do. My only concern is that if you reduce an already not sufficient number of car parking spaces for that site, you're going to push cars onto the main roads and the side roads, which are just going to cause if you've got cars parked on the main Canterbury Road, you've got 2 lanes of traffic coming out. There's no red lines there, so people can park. We have this issue up by the Ursuline. You've got cars accelerating off. You've got cars parked. Everybody's going to try and get into the other right-hand lane. It's going to cause absolute chaos. And I don't think you can reduce the number of car parking spaces for that site, because all you're going to do is push traffic onto the roads, and the roads won't take it. And that's my main issue with this. It's not the fact that I understand some trees, and to be honest, with the number of trees coming out, it's not a major issue for me, and I'm a tree man, you know that as much as anybody else. And I do understand that, and I think some have got to come down. But I think the problem with what you're trying to say is pushing the cars onto the side roads, and I don't approve of that at all. I think the road's dangerous enough as it is, and I think you've got to also look at no right turns and things like this. And if you had cycling access or pedestrian access through from Minster Road, then maybe that would help. But I think it's got to be looked at as a whole rather than just a fundamental what you just said. Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Hart. If I may, I totally you mentioned presume. We shouldn't presume, not at this stage. I do totally understand. I know in the area, like most of us do it, and the traffic along there, and you've mentioned other places where you have to get in the second lane because of parking. But again, it has been mentioned, obviously, with the KCC report, there's no problems. And as you've heard, we have to take notice of that. I think at the moment what Ian has come up with, and this is my view, and you're the committee, could be acceptable. Totally understand, Councillor Hart, what you're getting about, but presuming the thing isn't built or anything like that as yet. So we have to bear that in mind. Councillor Bayford.
Thank you, Chair. I do support Ian's suggestion. I believe that with careful planning, it may be possible to retain the number of parking spaces without the removal of the trees. I'm no expert, but I feel if it's important enough, it could be done. And as I said, in every other way, I do support this application. So I would be in favour of Ian's suggestion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bayford. Ian, you wish to come back on that?
Yeah, I think it's just to clarify. Maybe it would be clearer if it's not. Maybe my wording was slightly crude. That actually, what we would pursue would be either a reduction or a rearrangement of the parking. It's going to very much depend on, actually, getting into a room, getting on site potentially, and negotiating on the detail of this, and then taking any sort of change to the highway arrangement which may affect numbers to highways. And so that's why I think it's something that would require further discussion. Obviously, we've already done that to an extent, but obviously the applicant has now heard members' specific concerns about this particular issue, and therefore it does put more weight on them looking at these issues and seeing whether or not there is a way to resolve it. So I think we could probably tweak that motion to reflect maybe, to avoid the concerns that it would have to be a reduction in order to safeguard some of the trees that are here, and that if it is a reduction, we would obviously have to get Highways approval of that before we bring that back to members for a decision.
Thank you. Thank you, Ian. Councillor Orban.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think this is difficult, and what I mean by that is that a number of us have come up with different views and different reasons. We all have gone for refusal of this application, but for different kind of reasons. I certainly think the actual development is too bulky. I don't like the look of it. I think it's objectionable on the street scene, together with the loss of the trees. I'm not as vociferous as Councillor Hart in relation to the highway issues, because KCC they've made it clear they're quite happy with it and such. So I have difficulty in it going back to officers to look at it purely on the grounds of looking to see how we can associate the parking in different ways. So I'm not happy with that at all, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Orban. Councillor Wright. Microphone.
So there we go. Okay, something I'm quite surprised none of it, myself as well, because I only just thought of it. We are presuming that all the employees will be using cars. Now, would it be appropriate that we could encourage the Miles and Bar to come up with things like car sharing? And hey ho, the current topic at the moment is cycling, which would cut down the employees' cars.
I think, Councillor Wright, that could be a difficult one to tell people. I totally understand what you're saying about cycles, but I think we're all aware at the moment we have massive issues in Thanet with people riding bikes because they're going about 100 miles an hour. Not quite that, but I don't know whether I'm going to speak to Ian or look at Ian and say you wanted a comment on that.
Yeah, I think that is something that I think all of these things can be looked at within sort of a further discussion with the applicant to try and resolve the issues around this application, because as has been pointed out by all of the members, everything here is interconnected, because it's a combination of the use generates the parking then generates the pressure on the trees. So one change does affect another. So what I think in terms of the officer recommendation would be to defer it back to officers on the proviso that we would look at trying to resolve the particular issues with regards to the trees, and that in the event in either way, whether or not there's a resolution there or not, we report the application back to members. We provide what the resolution is if we've been able to reach one, and that's then something that we would put forward a recommendation to members to approve it. But what the report would also do is look at potential reasons for refusal along the lines of what has been discussed. So then it gives a bit more clarity for members about what the particular issues are when then making the determination, to get sort of a common consensus. As Councillor Orban's mentioned, obviously we've got a few different things being mentioned by different members. And so to try and get that collective consensus is, I think, best encapsulated within a report that comes back that provides commentary on potential reasons for refusal as well, in the event, obviously, that the resolution is not satisfactory to members.
Thank you for that, Ian. I will take Councillor Garner, and then I'm going to draw a line. I think it's been explained, members, and I totally understand what all members are saying here as well. One of those difficult ones, and we need to get it right. Councillor Garner.
Yeah, so I won't take up a lot of time. I was going to agree with Councillor Orban because there were a number of reasons why some of us rejected it, but I also agree with what he's just said, that to enable us to move on, and I think we should agree with Mr. Livingstone's suggestion. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Councillor Garner, and thank you, Councillor Orban. I appreciate. I've just seen what you've put here, and that's from Councillor Orban that we move on and would support what Ian has said. Were you going to say something, Ian?
Yes. So for ease, I think if I read out what I've scribbled down in front of me, and to move forward with that, then Chair, if you can then move that motion and get a seconder, then I think for the purposes of the minutes, I think it's probably isn't necessary to do just the classic recorded vote and go through each list of councillors again.
No, go along with that. Yeah.
So I'll just read out in terms of the motion, and this wording may be refined in the minutes, but you'll get the general sense of it, which is to defer to officers to pursue alternatives to car parking and the layout with the agreement of KCC Highways to seek to retain the mature trees to be removed from the site and report back to members in a future planning committee with a proposed resolution and also potential reasons for refusal.
Thank you. I will go for that. So I move what Mr. Livingston has said.
I'll second that. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Orban. And could I'm not going through names as you heard there. Do you all agree?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Right.
Agreed.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ian, for the explanation there. It's one of those we need to get it right. Okay. I'm going to say it. Does anyone need a break, go down the road or anything, or no?
I have to go to bed by at least 10 o'clock, Chair.
Sorry?
I have to be in bed by at least 10 o'clock, if that's all right.
You've got no chance. I could say we're live. Behave. Anyway, that concludes the public speaking for this meeting. I would call upon Charlotte if she could read out the agenda item, which there's two, as you know, two agenda items remaining. One we're not speaking about, which is 4B. I've said it, but if Charlotte wishes to read that out, if anybody wants to speak about it, please say so. Charlotte.
17 Harbour Street, Ramsgate.
Thank you. Is there any comment on that? No. Okay, so a proposer that is all okay, please. Yes. Second, someone?
I'll second. Yeah.
Did you get that, Charlotte? Yes. You get to know the voices. Okay. All agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Agenda item 5, which is land adjacent to Sampson Grange, Nash Road. Councillor Farrance was going to be with us this afternoon to speak about this. You may have received an email with her concerns, but earlier this afternoon she gave her apologies. So I'm going to ask the planning officer to read the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. I will just present my screen. Members will have seen this is an agenda item because it relates to sort of a couple of unique circumstances. So we have an outline planning application that was resolved for approval by members in August 2017. That's outline approval for 250 houses with highways infrastructure included and access included. This being reported back to members following consideration of the viability of the development and is also reported back because of the length of time that it's been since members originally resolved to grant the application. Therefore, it's important to consider whether or not any of the material planning considerations have changed. So I'm going to give a brief introduction to the outline application itself. I will keep it brief so that members, if they have any particular questions, they can come back on it. but it is important to note, obviously, that this has been resolved to be granted in terms of the development itself in 2017 by members. So this is the site in question. So this is a allocated housing site in the new local plan under policy H03. You have Nash Road along the top end of the site. You have St Gregory's Primary School adjacent to the site. Then you also have Manston Road here, which joins up then with Shottendane Road at this point here. And then you have the allotment site, the crematorium, as well as the cemetery to the south of the site. So this is just an aerial image. And again, you can see those particular features that I've mentioned. And then this is a view looking over towards Nash Road. So you can see here the allotment site adjacent to the allocated site, and the cemetery and the primary school. So the application, as mentioned, proposed 250 dwellings. One of the key elements of this site is the fact that it forms an allocated site on the basis of the strategic infrastructure, which is to support the Thanet transport strategy and to support the infrastructure under policy SP47, which is to build a road through this site to connect Manston Road and Nash Road. That involves the construction of a roundabout on the fronting Manston Road, and then a new realignment of Nash Road to bend around and go through this site, with then a new junction put in to link to the dwellings that front Nash Road itself. That is illustrated in this illustrative layout plan that was provided with the application. So this is a plan to demonstrate how the site could accommodate the 250 dwellings that the site has been allocated for. It includes a large amount of open space in this area. This has a dual purpose. It's to accord with the requirements of the policy about size of open space to be provided, but it's also to provide suitable screening to the listed building that's in here. As well as that, you can see just the relationship between general idea between the neighbouring properties and the site. However, obviously that is a matter for consideration at reserve matters. And it's important to note that when agreeing to resolve to grant the application in August 2017, members also resolved that any future reserve matters application that was submitted to the council should automatically be referred to planning committee. And so that is still proposed to occur. So looking just quickly at those highways works specifically, you have, this is the roundabout that was designed to be put forward. There are particular conditions that are outlined in the report in Annex 1, which looks at the detail of this infrastructure and design and allows for the submission of partial revisions to this infrastructure in terms of what it looks like in accordance with discussions with Kent Highways. However, it can't deviate from the specifications and requirements that this roundabout would provide in terms of lanes, widths, and so on. This does also provide a new road that would serve these properties that currently front Nash Road, as well as parking areas to be provided. One of the particular concerns that was looked at in detail by members previously was the impact on residents from this roundabout. And you'll note by Annex 1, there are particular conditions which relate to the impact on amenity of neighbours, including the need for a noise mitigation scheme to be provided. And that actually has to be provided in advance of the submission of the reserve matters. So the reserve matters application, which shows the detail, has to take account of the noise scheme, because obviously some of the solutions that are going to be made to try and avoid impact on neighbouring properties are going to result in a layout that must fit in with that scheme. So it's to try and make sure that the timing of all these different things come in accordance to ensure that one does follow the other. This is just showing the detail of the other end of the site with regards to the link down to Nash Road. And then we have, I suppose, the primary reason why this site is a key part of the Thanet transport strategy, and as a solution is Coffin House Corner, which I'd like to say needs no introduction. But obviously members will be familiar with this junction, but you can see it's obviously got 5 different exits, as well as Empire Terrace having a little access off here as well. So the main thing that this development would bring forward in terms of changing this is to close off the Nash Road arm of this junction, which is in accordance with the transport strategy of KCC, which would obviously reduce the signalised junction changes by one whole arm, which would also then direct traffic that wants to go towards westward up and via the new roundabout to go then through the local distributor standard road, which is obviously a wider road than would normally be required, that goes through the site, which would also be able to accommodate 4 buses and that sort of thing. So what would occur here is that this is closed, but it would also still include an access up to Empire Terrace. So it would remove what is a particularly awkward relationship with people coming up College Road and trying to go into Empire Terrace, although it's a limited number of movements because of the number of dwellings that are on Empire Terrace. So there's also a condition which means that the road connection has to be provided before this is closed off as well, for obvious reasons. And then the last bit of highways works that the site would bring forward is to change the prioritisation that occurs at the junction between Manston Road and Shottendane Road. So I'm sure most members will be familiar with the fact that at the moment you are waiting at a giveaway junction on the Manston Road to join Shottendane Road. Well, this would change that and changes that in line with the increase in movements that actually occur going down Manston Road, as well as those movements that would come via the link to westward that this site would produce. So therefore there's a change in the prioritisation here as well. Now, all of these highway works are linked to a phasing condition that is proposed, which is for no development should take place until a highways work phasing plan is submitted, which is condition 21. And this is to ensure that modelling is done to work out when the different things come online as the site develops, to make sure that we're both supporting the ability for the site to develop and access via vehicular transport, but also ensuring that there are no adverse impacts on the network by not having the relevant infrastructure in place before all the traffic is using it from both the development and also the surrounding road network. So that's whilst it probably might not have felt brief, a brief introduction to that application. In terms of the main reason this is being reported back to members is on the grounds of viability. So members will have seen from the commentary in the report that there was a submission of a viability appraisal to the council, which proposed 30% affordable housing, but on the basis that all of that housing was shared ownership with no affordable rent on a viability grounds, due to a combination of factors, but predominantly due to the highways costs in addition to what you would normally expect a site such as this to provide. And the reason why this viability came in just over 2 years ago, and the reason why it's been 2 years later is because there's been a significant amount of negotiation around that viability appraisal and quite a lot of back and forth, of which is outlined in the report. One of the principles behind the council's housing strategy, as well as the local plan, is to try and maximise the amount of affordable housing that's provided by sites, including allocated sites such as this one. And the point in the report, which is 3.5 of the report for members, outlines about affordable rent. And in the presentation earlier, Emma Fibbins outlined about the particular need for affordable rent, and specifically when it comes to those on the lowest incomes and those that are on the housing register that the council has. So the scenario that's put in front of members, which has been tested for viability, is one that provides 18% affordable housing on the site, but that split is a 70-30 split, being 70% of that 18% is affordable rent properties, which is 32 of the units, whereas the rest are shared ownership, to try and maximise the amount of affordable rent. And so that is the the viability scenario that has been tested. It's been tested doubly almost, because what we did do is make sure that we got some consultants via KCC to go through the costings of the constructing of the road and the additional cost that the roundabout, the link road, the offsite works would be required to provide. And that has all been fed into the viability appraisal, which has then subsequently been checked and put forward by officers. And that is therefore put forward to agree the recommendation to reduce the amount of affordable housing on the basis of those very specific costs to do with this particular site. It is considered, we've talked about this before, members, about with the Manston Green development recently, and the issues with viability. And it's very important that we are maximising absolutely every amount that we can get in terms of affordable housing on sites. However, it is considered reasonable in this instance, given the specific requirements of this site to provide the strategic highway improvements, that this is an equitable and reasonable solution to bring forward the development on this site. As well as that, the report also outlines additional considerations with regards to the new Thanet local plan, which has obviously been adopted subsequently, and this manifests itself in a couple of grounds. One is that all new development is required to accord with the nationally described space standards. So there is a condition that's proposed to be added to those safeguarding conditions in Annex 1 that requires all dwellings shown in the Reserve Matters applications to accord with the national space standards. As well as that, there is the requirement under the same policy, which is QDO4, that there would be increased water efficiency from new housing development to 110 litres per person per day, which connects to the building regulations, which then means that they can get that through building regs as well. And as well as that, there are some updates that will need to occur to the existing planning conditions that members approved previously. With regards to policy references, there is a reference to lifetime homes, which are now enshrined in the new local plan, to adaptable and accessible houses, which are also enshrined in Part M of building regs. So there are a few conditions that need updating as well. In the last point that the report also identifies is the change that's occurred to the understanding of the habitat regulations assessment that's required for new residential development in the district, and that required an appropriate assessment to be carried out in advance of determination and in advance of agreeing the mitigation for the impact on the special protection area caused by additional recreational pressure. That has been agreed by Natural England, and that appropriate assessment has been therefore put forward. And it's considered that the heads of term in the report would cover the mitigation to avoid the impact on the special protection area. There are also some changes to the heads of terms because things have moved on in the last 3 years in terms of KCC contributions, and therefore those are changed, and those are detailed in the report as well. And so therefore overall, this application is recommended to defer and delegate for approval, subject to the ratification agreement of a legal agreement securing the contributions and the affordable housing amount as outlined in the report, with the conditions in Annex 1 updated with the addition of the 2 conditions to reflect the new local plan. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ian. I move the officer's recommendation is adopted. Could the Vice Chair please second?
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you. Members, I have questions here from Councillor Owen.
Hi, Chair. Yeah, thank you. Here we go again.
Councillor Orban.
Yeah, thank you. Am I on? Yeah, thank you.
You request to speak.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me all right?
Thank you. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Okay, you weren't moving, Chair. You're stuck. That's better.
No.
Here we go again. We've got developers come in, developer site, agree affordable housing or whatever it may be. Then they don't build it for a few years, and then things change. They want this, they want that, and they want to reduce the amount of affordable housing. I'm sorry, Chair, I do not agree with this at all, and will not be supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you, Chair. As always, affordable housing is a very complex area. We hear the phrase and we think that it simply encompasses particular forms of social housing, but as evidenced by this, when we have part buy, part rent, you're looking at a very different scenario to affordable rentals. And I think, unfortunately, when it comes to larger developments, because we rely on larger developments to fulfill a lot of our infrastructure needs, because we frankly don't receive sufficient funding centrally in order to do it ourselves, we're quite often put in extremely difficult situations when it comes to fulfilling our requirements to our residents. And our residents are at the heart of this. Their housing needs and their accommodation needs should always come first. So I recognise that the form of housing that's being suggested now fits our population better. Affordable rental is much more appropriate for our area, I would say. But we are almost halving the contribution at this point. And I don't think that can be underestimated. I'm unhappy with this, to say the least. And I think if we are to make any alteration, especially one that is this significant, then we need to be looking, frankly, at a much higher percentage of affordable rental, because that is what we need. So if we are to drop to this very significant level, I would be expecting that, frankly, it would be 100% affordable so that we can actually provide the services that we need to our residents. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Whitehead. Councillor Hart.
Thank you, Chair. I must agree with Councillor Alban. It's exactly the same scenario. Get the builders in, work out. They all know what they've got to do from the outset. So 3 years later, they come back using old figures. They turn around and say, well, we get some very clever accountants in. We can't afford to do it. So therefore, we're not going to do it. It's got to stop. This is going to happen on every single thing. And we can't just let them get away with it. And I mean, at the end of the day, they knew what they were entering into when they took this on. And it's as simple as that. And we just have to make sure that we are giving our residents affordable housing. And this is not achieving it. And, you know, I know they've got to put infrastructure in, but they knew that when they took it on. It's not a surprise to them. And I just think we've got to make sure that we stick to our guns and say, no, you agreed 30% and the full cost associated with that to give to everybody else, and they've got to do it.
Thank you, Councillor Hart. Councillor Garner.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with what's been said by the previous speakers. As Mr Livingston mentioned, we recently, the last time we spoke about Manton Green was a reduction which came in quite quickly, reduction in affordable housing, and it seems we roll over quite quickly to developers. And looking at some of the dates, I know the committee approved this on August 2017. It was 9 months later that the developer had their viability statement ready and submitted, asking for this reduction. And I think it's wrong. I think we should be sticking to our guns on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garner. Ian, you wish to come back?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to come back. In terms of the consideration of viability evidence, the National Planning Practice Guidance gives quite a lot of detail about how local authorities have to consider the viability concerns when they're put forward. You know, in this instance, we are, you know, very mindful of the reduction of affordable housing, and I disagree that this reflects any sort of position that we would normally take to just allow the reduction in affordable housing. You can see from the annexes to this report the extent to which this has been looked into in detail. The report also outlines how we're not green when it comes to what's hidden in viability assessments. We've seen these time and time again. Unfortunately, we bring it to members when we are convinced by it. There are lots that don't come to members because we've secured the required amount. So it is something that's regrettable. We wouldn't be putting it in front of members because obviously I absolutely understand the reaction. But it is put forward on the basis of this evidence, and we do think that in this instance, given the nature of this link and the evidenced costs that are associated with this link for 250 houses, which is an additional 3.7 million on top of what you would normally, be sort of putting into your costs for the internal roads. It's an additional 3 million that this site has to bear. So it is considered that this is a solution to both bring forward housing development with maximising the viable amount of affordable rent that you can provide on this site, with that infrastructure coming forward as well. That's why we've put it in front of members. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ian. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm wondering. I agree with quite a lot of what Helen said. I've made it known to a lot of people. I actually do favour shared ownership rather than affordable housing because I think it puts a lot more people onto the housing ladder and helps them on a path to owning their own home. But I'm wondering, is there a compromise here? 18%, that's a big reduction. I would have thought maybe 24% would be a much more realistic figure if we have to cave in. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Rzeski.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I actually agree with Councillor Whitehead here. I think it would be nicer to see a greater rental property allowance rather than going down shared ownership. And make the affordable housing truly affordable. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Rzeski. Now, I don't have any other speakers. I don't know whether you want to come in there, Ian. What's been said?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Well, I think for risk of going to the vote to get the same result as on the previous item, I think it'd be, I understand what members are saying and that there are obviously alternative splits that can be provided. The issue and concern would be in terms of looking for 100% affordable rent is that obviously shared ownership properties have an increased amount of gross development value in comparison to affordable rent in terms of how much they go for and how they work in the viability appraisal. So if you increase the amount of affordable rent, it would lead to a potential, obviously, decrease in the overall amount of affordable housing. But clearly members, collectively, obviously we've had 7 sort of members speak about this one, are of the mind that the current reduction in affordable housing is not acceptable when looking through both the report and also the evidence that's been produced. I'm in the spirit of trying to resolve this matter as much as we can, given that this is a strategic allocation, with obviously the chairman's it's the chairman's discretion whether or not this would occur. I would recommend potentially that the motion that's in front of members potentially would be withdrawn if the chairman was so minded, with the vice chair obviously who seconded it also, if in agreement, withdrawing, for it basically to go back for the next month for further negotiations as to alternatives to try and increase that number of affordable units, with the minutes noting members' particular concerns about the reduction on the basis of the evidence of viability that's there. Chair, it may be that you decide that it should go to the vote, so that's recorded, and then we put forward a motion. It's entirely up to you.
Thank you, Ian. Again, thank you for your advice there and listening to members. Again, we got a very difficult one here and a totally impartial, which I have to be, but I do understand what is being said and haven't read the reports. I know it's been put on my shoulders, which I don't mind. That's what I'm here for. I would ask that this is withdrawn, if I can get a seconder for that, and it comes back. Sorry, Ian?
Oh, sorry. It would need to be that the seconder of the motion would have to agree to it to be withdrawn.
Yes, yeah. I'm putting forward that this is withdrawn. If I can have a seconder for that.
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman-Cook. And
so, Chair, sorry to interrupt. But therefore, what I would suggest in terms of a motion is very similar in a way to the motion that was put forward last time, in so much that we go back, we negotiate any further if we can, add to the proportion, hearing the concerns of members about two things. One, the potential for the overall reduction of affordable housing, to see whether or not, irrespective of the evidence, the applicant is willing to increase the amount of affordable housing provided on the site, and about the proportion of affordable rent as well. And if not, the application is then reported back similarly for consideration of potential reasons for refusal. It will also obviously include the officer's view, which, as is enshrined in this report, is that the application should be approved, but it will cover all of those things.
Thank you for that, Ian. And members, you've heard Mr Livingston's comments there and advice, which I think is fair. And I've had a seconder for my proposal. I won't go through all the list of names again. If you could indicate whether you would be happy at that, to bring it back to committee.
Sorry, Chair. It will need, if it's possible.
Recorded vote.
If you could move the motion, I didn't hear a seconder to that motion. So if you move the motion that I proposed, then you need a seconder for that motion.
Councillor Coleman-Cook seconded.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Sorry, I missed that.
Okay. If you wish me to go through, if you're happy, members, and say a very difficult one once again, and if this can be resolved in the coming weeks, as we've seen this afternoon with the other application, I think the whole thing makes sense. Totally understand, members, and I have views on this obviously as well. I will go through names instead of just a yay, all the rest of it. But if you could agree with the comments that have been made to bring it back, if you agree, would you please say yes or no or abstain? Councillor Coleman-Cook.
For.
Councillor Oldham.
Against.
Councillor Bayford.
For.
Councillor Curry. For. Councillor Garner.
Against.
Councillor Hart.
For what, bringing it forward again, if that's right. I think people are getting confused with what's going on here.
No, sorry, Councillor Hart, to bring it for the officers to go back, look at the application, negotiate, and then bring it back to committee.
Yeah, for that. Sorry, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Rzeski.
For.
Councillor Wright.
For.
Councillor Whitehead. Have we lost?
Sorry, for renegotiation.
Thank you, and myself for. So once again, and thank you for that, Ian. Again, a difficult one, and members, a difficult one. The motion has been carried. Right, I think after whatever we finished for this afternoon. I know it's been a long meeting, members, and I appreciate, obviously, we're all at home or somewhere. I always say it to you, thank you. Keep well, family, safe, and all that we're going through. And you can buy me a pint.
Can I just thank the officers for putting up with us this afternoon?
You nothing unusual there, Councillor Alban. You took the word from me. Again, I'll say it as well, but a lot of background work goes on, as we all know. And yeah, thank you very much.